Howdy y'all, it's Mr. Callen with surface area of spheres. Let's go ahead. I'm going to do every single odd problem, so this is going to be a long video. Feel free to fast forward, rewind, pause where you want, do a couple problems. I will do all the odds. Your assignment will be to do the evens. So here we go. Let's start with the directions. Find the surface area of each figure. First, write your answer in terms of pi. Notice I've highlighted that in blue. Optional, use another color. And then write your answer in decimal form, rounding to the nearest hundred. So I want to pause for a second, come over here and ask you, which would you rather have, 15 times pi dollars or $47.12 and then 4 thousandths, a part of a penny? I want you to pause if you want, think about it. But if I could just point out here, if I come to the Desmos calculator, 15 times pi, if I were to type in 15 times pi, it says there's 47.1238898. I'm going to come back and write 47.1238898. And chances are, if it goes this far, the calculator is just going to run out of decimal spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and write the ... and it is in some crazy, ugly, irrational number. Now, what do you notice about these two numbers? Well, you got it. Pretty much the same thing. You know, it's just like we've talked about representing things different ways. 1/2 is the same as 5/10 is the same as 50%. Some people call me Mr. Callen, some people call me Uncle Tim. I'm the same dude. So these numbers are really about the same thing. Don't get me wrong, though. The first number is probably more exact. After all, you see more decimal places down here. So while this number might be the best and the exact answer, there's nothing wrong with writing this number because it is approximately the same amount. So keep that in mind as we work our way, writing our answer in one and then two different ways. Now, finding the surface area, I'm going to go to my reference sheet. Notice here it says surface area of a sphere is 4 times pi times radius squared. It is only 2 dimensions. It is the square of the radius. Keep that in mind. While the rest of those formulas, radius times radius times radius, that's a volume. Radius times height, that's a volume. Some area of the base, which is 2 dimensions, times a third dimension, that also is a volume. But for surface area, we only need 2 dimensions. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to write the surface area of any sphere is 4 times pi times the square of the radius. Now, it's important here to note, I'm going to use the same formula for pretty much every problem on here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this number, 24. This goes all the way across. Once again, we have to recognize a radius is the distance from the center point to the outside. If, however, you have 2 radii, we call that the diameter. Because 24 is the diameter, we're going to split 24 into 2 parts to find that the real radius here is going to be 12. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to draw 12 feet in here. And then what we have to remember is it says first write your answer in terms of pi. So I think what I will do is I'll kind of just move that pi to the side. Now think about it. If you do 1 times 2 times 3, that could be the same as 2 times 3 times 1. Or even 1 times 3 times 2. The point is that multiplication is commutative. We may change the order of these and still have the same answer. So all I'm doing is I'm going to change the order. I'm going to put that pi there at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply 4 times 12 times another 12 times pi. So if I go to my Desmos calculator, let me go ahead and type in 4 times 12 squared, but I'm going to leave the pi alone. Notice that it says 576. So I'm going to write down here 576 times pi, And then, of course, I'm going to write feet times feet is square feet. After all, we want to know how many squares of wrapping paper would it take to cover this up. Now, that is one way of writing in my answer with the pi left in. But the other way that I need to write it is the approximate answer in decimal form. So I go back to my calculator, and I'm simply going to add in times pi. And now you'll see off to the side we have 1,809.557368 dot dot dot. It is closest to 56 hundredths. So I'm going to go ahead, come back to my assignment, and write 1,809 and 56 hundredths of a square foot. Now remember, like I asked you at the beginning, which amount of money would you rather have? Noticing that they're pretty much the same amount. These two answers are pretty much the same, but the blue answer, 576 times pi, has all those crazy decimal places, so it is the exact answer. But the orange answer does not have all those crazy decimal places, so it is approximate. Directions ask us to write our answer in both forms, so we will leave it in both forms, and we will move along. Let's go ahead on to number 3, where once again we'll use the same formula, 4 times pi times the square of the radius. And we ask ourselves that same question, is 6 a radius or a diameter? Once again, it goes all the way across. So let's cut 6 into 2 parts. And quickly we realize that the radius of that sphere would be 3 kilometers. If we go ahead and move the pi to the outside, I'm going to go to my decimals calculator. I'm going to type in 4 times 3 times 3. Four times 3, how about I just write 3 squared? And I'd get 36, but don't forget, that is 36 times the pi, whether or not you write the times sign or not. And of course, kilometers times kilometers is square kilometers. How many squares would cover this? Well, it's kilometers, so maybe this is a moon, maybe this is some large object. So that's one answer, 36 times pi kilometers squared. If I go back to my calculator and I finish that with the times pi, I will now get a decimal. Take a look off to the right, 113. And approximately, well, is that closer to 9 hundredths or 10 hundredths? Because it has the 7 after it, is closest to 10 hundredths. So I'll go ahead and write this answer as an approximately 113 and 10 hundredths. Remembering that these two answers are pretty much the same thing, but the blue answer is slightly closer and more accurate. Now, with this in mind, folks, some of you are going to go ahead and pause and just start up the even answers, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. Some of you might want to watch a few more examples. You're welcome to do that. Please feel free to pass forward if you wish until we scroll all the way to the back side and I do some problems like 15 and 17. For the rest of you, let's continue on with number 5, where once again the most important part is examining this amount. This measurement is 6 miles a radius or a diameter. Well, I notice here it does start at the center going to the outside. Therefore, 6 is the radius. Don't change 6 to 12. Don't cut it in half to 3. We're going to multiply 4 times pi times 6 squared. If you wish, you can go ahead and rewrite it with the pi at the end. 4 times 6 times 6 would be 144. Oh, don't forget the times pi. Miles times miles, or miles squared. If we were to approximate it, we'd get 452 and 39 hundredths miles squared. Moving along to number 7, ladies and gents. 4 times pi times the radius squared, where again we examined this quantity, and it looks to me that 4 is the radius starting at the center, measuring the distance to the outside. So we have 4 meters squared. 4 times another 4 would be 64 times pi, and of course meters times meters is meters squared. To rewrite our answer in approximate form, if I take 64 multiplied by pi, it would be about 201 and 6/100 square meters. Let's move on down to number 9. 4 times pi times radius squared. Once again, we see that 11 is the radius, so do not change the 11. And if we were to rewrite the pi at the end, where we go 4 times 11 times 11, we get 484 times pi. And of course, feet times feet, we're talking how many square feet would it take to cover up if you're thinking of wrapping paper. So there's an exact answer. Going for the approximate answer, go ahead and take 484 and actually multiply it by pi, and you get 1,520 and about 5,300 square feet. 2 different ways of pretty much writing almost exactly the same answer. On to number 11. Once again, 18 4/10 is the radius. Don't change it. So if we move the pi to the end and multiply 4 times 18 4/10 times another 18 4/10, we would get exactly 1,354 and 24/100 times pi square miles. Now notice, I am not rounding the 24/100, not yet at least. However, when we do want our answer in decimal form and we multiply this big long decimal times pi, we're going to get about 4,254 and 47/100. I know it's not exactly 47, but it's awfully stinking close. Square miles. And let's wrap up one more example like these with number 13. Aha, finally we see 31 8/10 is a diameter. It does go all the way across. Therefore, if we were to split that up into 2 parts, we would find out very quickly that half of that, or the radius, would be 15 9/10 feet. So let's go ahead and write in 15 9/10 feet. And if we write the pi at the end, where we do 4 times 15 9/10 times another 15 9/10, we'll find exactly 1,011 and 24/100 times pi square feet. If, however, we want an approximate solution, think about that. 1,000 times 3 is going to be about 3,000. In this case, we get 3,176 and about, I notice this one is closest, not 89, not 91, it's closest to 90 square feet. And that's why I want to put that 0 there, because we are rounding to the hundredths place. Let's move on to number 15. Welcome back to those of you that fast forwarded through the previous several problems. But please notice we're still finding the surface area here. In this case, the key is going to be looking at what is given. For number 15, a radius is given. For number 17, a diameter is given. So be very careful with that. As we go to 15, the radius is 4 miles. Do not change the 4. So if we move the pi to the end and multiply 4 times another 4, 4 squared, we would get exactly 64 times pi, and then miles times miles, or square miles. Now, remembering that is the exact answer, let's go ahead and find the approximate answer. And if we were to multiply 64 times pi, you'd get about 201 and closest to 6/100 square miles. remembering that those numbers are almost exactly the same. That's why I put the approximately equal sign here. Now for number 17, what we have to do is be careful. This is a diameter. So we're going to take that's 36 4/10 and we're going to split it in half. When we do so, we would find that the radius would be 18 2/10. So be careful with that, not to use 36 as the diameter. Now let's go ahead and multiply 4 times 18 2/10 times another 18 2/10, and we get 1,324 9600 times pi square yards. That is the exact answer. Let's go ahead now and find an approximate answer. If we multiply that number times pi, we'd get about 4,162. And if we rounded to the nearest hundredths, it'd be 48 hundredths square yards. Wrap up with number 19. Number 19, once again, you got to be careful. They give you a diameter of 36 6/10. And if that's the diameter, simply cut it in half, split it into two parts to find 18 3/10. Very close to the one right up above. So if we were to multiply 4 times 18 3/10 times another 18 3/10, we would get 1,339 5600 times pi, inches times inches, or square inches. That is the exact answer. We go ahead and approximate it. Multiply that by pi, and you get about 4,208 3500 square inches. All right, folks, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Don't forget, as we discussed, if I asked you, would you rather have 15 pi dollars or $47 and 124 thousandths of a dollar, you're going to remember that it is, well, Mr. Cowan, those are almost exactly the same. Quite frankly, 15 times pi is the more exact number because it has all those other digits behind it. Go ahead and complete all the even numbers. And anytime you're having trouble, if you're having trouble with 18, take a look at 15, 17, which is it closer to? And then you can decide to look at 15 or 17. If you're having trouble with number 10, is number 10 more like number 9 or number 11, and so on? And remember that every problem on here should have two different answers. One that I wrote in blue is going to be the exact answer. And the one that I wrote in orange is going to be the approximate answer. Take your time, do well, and email or Google chat me if you need any help.